Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. What's going on, everybody? My name is Justin Fensterman, and welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by that good old FG, FantasyGuru.com. Become part of the Elite Mafia by signing up. Support at FantasyGuru.com. We got a lot cooking right now. You'll see it in the bio there in the description. We got Ray Flowers, Fantasy Baseball Draft Guide that's popping, and more articles popping out like the best popcorn you ever had. And that's why we do what we do. That's what it's all about here. Not only that, but we've got Super Bowl props up. We've got Super Bowl strategy articles. Our staff picks are live at FantasyGuru.com. And if you're not signed up, make sure you sign up to get involved in Sunday's action. Fun props, serious props. I've been talking about a few on this show over the last couple of days. Today, I'll be joined by Rich Maletto of FantasyGuru.com. He'll stop by, talk a little DFS. I handled more of the betting side with Armando Marsal. This time I'll go a little DFS showdown style with Rich Maletto. That'll also kind of intersect with betting too. So with that, the first part of this show is going to be basketball. I'm going to talk about what's gone on in the NBA. A few of these teams flipped upside down. We'll give reactions and get you ready for tonight's DFS NBA slate as we now turn the page in what is the rockiest DFS night of the season, in my opinion. And that's because there's a night and there's a day. The day is the final day of the season where you've got every team playing split in the afternoon. You don't know who's not going to play. With every team on the board, you have to be careful with who you invest in. This slate, the Wednesday before the trade deadline, because the NBA trade deadline passes tomorrow afternoon at about 3 Eastern. And with that, we don't know what's going to happen. We've got teams that could have players all of a sudden in transit, and that's where we're going to have to be careful. We got lucky in the effect of getting deals done before the night slate began last night. So now, tonight, hoping for the same thing, but we might not have as much luck with some of the players that are rumored to be sent packing here. I view this slate tonight, this DFS slate, as a cruise to Antarctica. For those that don't know or maybe haven't been to Antarctica before, to get to Antarctica, you can't just fly into Antarctica International unless you're a scientist. You're not able to do that. Instead, you got to fly to, I believe, Argentina, and then from there, take a cruise to Antarctica. And it's not some nice, easy sunset cruise. This boat is rocking back and forth here because it's where the Atlantic and the Pacific Ocean collide, and that means that it's going to be shaky and rocky waters. That's what we're entering for tonight's DFS NBA slate. But let's talk a little bit, before I bring on Rich Maletto to talk about the big game, the Super Bowl, let's talk a little bit about what happened last night, as I always do here, because authenticity is key. I'll always talk about my mistakes, but I'll also talk about what went right. And what went right last night was the core four for all of you riding in DFS. I know it's been a lot of 5-6 game slates, and that's a little bit of a turnoff. Now we're at an 8-1 last night and then a 7 tonight. So we got a few more meat, a little bit more meat on the bone to chew into for tonight. But last night's core four was awesome. We went in the right way when it came to Indiana. Indiana had shortly after, because I believe I was talking at the time about Andrew Nembhard, saying, he's been better and he'd be interesting. Shortly after I got off the stream yesterday, all of a sudden, Indiana just ruled out all of their players. So we had a choice to make because they were in that sexy matchup against Utah as players in transit and everything. We had to make a decision, and we made the right decisions with that game because we went with Isaiah Collier on the Utah side, who had every assist imaginable and provided a little bit of offense too, which was absolutely grand. And on that other side, we went in on Furphy. We also went in on Jarris Walker, who had been playing a lot better. And so because of that, we were rewarded big time, and we were able to, in fact, the entire core four was able to hit because of that. And that made me very, very glad in that regard. So for those that were playing DFS, we had a very nice night. Jalen Johnson was the big pay up, and Jalen Johnson has been just automatic as any. It's very hard to stop Jalen Johnson. It's a little bit easier to stop Scotty Barnes on the drive than it is Jalen Johnson, but he does a little bit of everything. From the betting side, it was a mediocre night because we hit a few low rebound props and Najee Marshall, who once PJ Washington ruled out, thinking that he was once again going to be in a good position to rebound. He did. We also went in on Asar Thompson too, and with Asar Thompson, we kind of just made it there. It really is a volume rebounder, grabs them in short spurts, but at the same time, he's still reliable at that 5.5 number. And then we got, I don't want to say a little bit cute, because you put Dyson Daniels up against the Miami Heat in a situation where they're missing their wings, and feeds should be absolutely vital here for Daniels. The Hawks messed with his minutes last night because he played just 22 minutes, and this wasn't like this game, it had a little bit of distance when it came to the lead. It had a little bit of distance, but then all of a sudden you started to see them all of a sudden hang around a little bit more, and like Miami hanging around a little bit more, and Dyson Daniels was played sparingly. So I don't know what the situation was with him, but he didn't play as many minutes. 22 minutes, he should have been playing for a little bit longer there. So the rebounding got off to a bad start. I put in 2 singles Dyson Daniels props. The rebounding just did not work out, which is shocking because Miami just gives up a lot of rebounds. But the assists, that was the one that I was really disappointed in, because that one I liked a little bit better. I liked both of them, but unfortunately, because of his minutes being cut, he was on pace, but his minutes being cut kind of screwed us out of that. So we missed both Dyson Daniels props. And then we had that rebound parlay going in the Celtics-Mavs game where Daniel Gafford and Jaylen Brown hit so easily. Jaylen Brown has just been a rebounding monster, but Derek White, unfortunately, who, look, I put it down to 4 rebounds for Derek White because he had been consistently doing that for at least the last month and a half. But this was one of those nights where he just wasn't grabbing boards, and that was pretty much it there. Maybe should have gone the assist direction. But Boston making a trade and getting Nikola Vucevic, what does that mean for the rest of the offense? Well, I'll say this. For Neemias Queta, he still has value. And I'm loving the fact that, even thinking of it, that his price is probably going to drop a little bit too. Vucevic steps right in an area where he is needed. They need some front court offense. And I'll say this about Vucevic too. Vucevic had been playing, and I don't know what changed, but maybe it was Jalen Smith all of a sudden starting with him instead of Patrick Williams, which they've been doing for 3-4 years, it seems like at this point. But or rather just Matas Buzelis at that 4 and then go right to Vucevic. Jalen Smith made a definite impact in that lineup, but Vucevic had started holding his own defensively too, and that's going to be very helpful when it comes to the Celtics. When they got Anthony Simons, he was expected to be flipped at this point, that he was not a long-term piece or anything like that. The Celtics don't need that. And so now the Celtics get something that they actually need, and that's a center. So now they got their big offense guy in Vucevic, who's been playing improved defense, and they've got Neemias Queta, who, hell of a job for Neemias Queta. And there's still value in this guy. I feel like it's like Star Wars. I'm like talking to freaking, Padme, like, oh, there's still good in him. There's absolutely still good in him, because he's going to be a big-time defender. There might be times, because remember, Vucevic has some range. So there may be times where they're on the court together, which I think would be great if you had more teams are opting to do that these days. So I think the Vucevic I almost feel like I'm like having a slight deja vu moment. I almost feel like this was supposed to happen last year and didn't. And now it was like a rumor for last year, Vucevic being linked with Boston, and now coming to fruition there. And it didn't cost them that much. So Nikola Vucevic is a good stand-in center that's going to give them offense. It's going to take a little bit of the pressure off Jaylen Brown. Will his scoring go down a little bit? I don't think much at all. Maybe a point. That's about it. But Jaylen Brown is still a big part of this offense. What this means for guys like Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, though, yeah, they're going to lose out a little bit more. On the rebounding side, yeah, Neemias Queta was still a fine rebounder, so Vucevic going in there doesn't exactly change anything in how I view things. Will I still be looking at the occasional Derek White low rebound prop? Yes. Will I be looking at Jaylen Brown now that he's 7.5? We've been really churning and burning with the 6.5 line, and I'm almost hoping he has some games where we're not on, where he has a few lower rebounding games with Vucevic. So all of a sudden the algorithms that they have for these lines on these books recalibrate and a drop Brown down to 6.5 at reasonable odds, because Jaylen Brown's rebounding ability has been fierce this year. Big time credit. I wonder if Celtics fans out there thought prior to this year, if they thought that they'd be kind of in this headspace about Jaylen Brown, because I started to feel like the Celtics were, I don't want to say fully turning on him, but it was almost like a, who do you keep between Tatum and Brown? Why not keep them both? They're both that damn good at what they do. And you keep them both healthy, you could go back to the NBA Finals. And you're seeing what this Celtics team is doing without Jason Tatum. So Vucevic slides right into a good role. I don't expect it to be much different from what it was in Chicago. I still expect him to get 30 minutes. So that's going to be interesting. Now, tonight against Houston, I don't think he's going to end up playing. So that's something to think about too. And by the way, that's something to think about from the Rockets side, because we were screwed the other night out of that Rockets rebound parlay. That's something that I'm looking into for this evening as well. Before I continue, I want to say what's going on to Adam. How you doing, man? It's good to see you. I will bring up your question with Rich right there. But I'll say this. If I'm going to do which defense am I going to go in as a captain there, if I'm going to, or which of these options, if anything, probably Seattle defense is where I'm looking at if you're going to look. Kayshawn would be probably my 2 seed right there. But again, it's a low floor, high ceiling situation. But I will ask Rich Maletto when he joins me. So it's great to see you. Let's talk about some of these other trades that happened too. Jaren Jackson Jr. going to the Utah Jazz. Another trade that I feel like almost happened at one point. Now, Jaren Jackson Jr. has had injury issues, kind of like Michael Porter, but we conveniently forget because he hasn't missed a boatload of time yet this year. But let's talk about it from the Utah side. This works if Walker Kessler stays. This is part of it right here. You can't just look at this front court of Lowry Markkanen, Jaren Jackson, and Walker Kessler and be like, wow, look at this future. Walker Kessler is a restricted free agent. He's hurt. He's out for the year. He's a restricted free agent. And Utah wants to keep him. So because this guy's going to get offers. Walker Kessler is one of the best rebounders in the game. He's a very solid post defender. He's a good offensive rebounder, was one of the best in the game last year. And this is going to be someone who a championship team is going to be mouthwatering over having him as their starting center. And they're going to offer I don't know who it might be. We'll have to wait and see. But they could be offering a boatload of cash in order to get him. But that's Utah's job now. If they go into next season with just Markkanen and Jackson, this isn't going to work. Jackson, let's not forget, he's good with blocks. He's a good scorer. He's a little bit physical, so sometimes a fouling, but not as much as he was a few years ago. He's injury prone. He's an excellent defender. He's a great defender. And if he's forced in the post, maybe he will grab more than 4 to 5 rebounds a game. But that's kind of how we have to view it in Utah, because let's not forget, at least for now, maybe this changes, but they also have Jusuf Nurkic too. So that's what the front court is going to probably look like in Utah. You're going to have Keontae George and Ace Bailey, and then you're going to have someone like or Collier and Keontae George, and then you're going to have those three for the rest of the year, unless Nurkic is somehow dealt. But they also got Jock Landale in the deal too, which that will be vital off the bench. Another situation where I think that Landale's ceiling lowers a little bit, and that's because of the health. But let me just say this. Utah has been screwing around so much with Jusuf Nurkic that they might see Jock Landale and say, you know what, let's see what this guy's got. They still have Kyle Filipowski, but now I feel like Kyle Filipowski is going to be playing a little bit more on the wing while Jock Landale plays a little bit more in the low block. And I was a little bit surprised, all things considered, with Memphis, because Zach Edey's been out and Santi Aldama, it seems like, has been in and out, that they'd get rid of Jock too in this deal. But they wanted the first round picks that they're getting. They also, by the way, Memphis in this deal, they get slow-mo Kyle Anderson. Everyone likes Taylor Hendricks. They think he's a prospect. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. I mean, again, Utah getting Jackson, Landale, and Conker is somebody who has been a decent role player. Vince Williams earlier this year was making noise when John Morant was first out. All of a sudden, you started to see him run the point a little bit more. We hit a few props on Vince Williams when his props were super low. So now I'm wondering here what his role is going to be off the bench. Although if Collier is coming in off the bench, this guy's just going to be a wing shooter, and that's about it. But from the Memphis side, I mean, the little I've seen from Walter Clayton, I'm willing to see a little bit more. But now they're a little bit healthier. They've got Ty Jerome in there. They've got Cam Spencer in there. Remember, they do have Scottie Pippen, who's eventually going to return and be part of this mix. So Clayton's going to be looking, when all's said and done, at a similar role to what he had in Utah. Hendricks is going to be the wild card. Niang is just a throw-in. But the big thing that they got back, Memphis here, is they got draft capital. And this doesn't necessarily mean, remember, they've got these draft picks. Utah is going to transform into a giant. Those draft picks are going to be very valuable, especially if Utah can't retain Walker Kessler. To me, this move is almost pointless unless you keep Walker Kessler. And I know they want to, but they just took a swing, and we'll have to see what happens there with that. Then we talk about a deal that was announced, but then all of a sudden rumored that came true. And this is one, and getting some of your reaction out there from Cleveland, you don't seem to really like it too much. And I'm going to be honest, neither do I. Let me explain. The Clippers trading James Harden to the Cavs and a pick to the Cavs, or rather James Harden to the Cavs for Darius Garland and a second rounder. So let's talk about the Cleveland side first, them getting James Harden. So Darius Garland, when he's in, he is a phenomenal defender. He has had major lower body problems, particularly in his foot, his toe. He has had major issues over the last probably 12 months. Darius Garland in versus Darius Garland out makes a world of difference. That's why Darius Garland is so special. So Cleveland, which let's look it up while I'm on with you here. This is something I probably should have looked up before, but didn't. Let's look at Cleveland for the season. The Cavaliers defense is actually ranked that's not last year. Over the last 5 games, they've been ranked in the top 10. For the entire season, though, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been a middle-of-the-road defensive team. James Harden being there does not help with that. James Harden being there, all of a sudden from a DFS angle, it puts us in a big ball of confusion. How are we going to be able to justify spending up for $9K plus for either James Harden or Donovan Mitchell? Because here's the interesting thing. Yeah, the Clippers struggled out of the gate, but then they started figuring it out. They had won 7 of their last 10, and you started to see that defense that we saw last year. And I had a bunch of crow last year regarding the Clippers because I didn't think they were going to be a 50-win team. The Clippers were all of a sudden starting to get their flow back, and it was starting to work. And I was watching them, and I was like, okay, this overall just performing better. Everyone seems to be finding their roles. And then somehow, some way, James Harden, who is begged off of teams, clearly said something like he wasn't interested, which I don't understand why. He wanted to get traded so he didn't have to be the guy every single night. That's part of the price when playing with Kawhi Leonard. He's going to be sitting out a decent amount of times because the Clippers can't go anywhere without Kawhi Leonard. So they trade James Harden to the Cavs, but it almost, I hate to say it like this, but while Darius Garland has been out and Donovan Mitchell has been running the point, it's been kind of like the same player that they just traded for. Here's what I'll compare it to. Kind of like when the Knicks, way back when in beginning of 2011, they traded half their team, overhauled half their team. 2010, 2011, right after they signed Stoudemire, they were off to an incredible start. They were very competitive. They had a lot of good pieces. They had Stoudemire, who was their centerpiece, who was doing well. And then all of a sudden the pressure for James Dolan, to trade for Carmelo Anthony, who clearly wanted to go there, who was going to be a free agent in the offseason, but there was intense pressure to trade for him, and the Knicks overhauled half their team. And while, yeah, on paper, the whole Amari Stoudemire back then and Carmelo Anthony seemed great, my problem with that, and I went on radio shows and media to talk about this, my problem with that back then was they were kind of the same player. Both ball dominant, needed time to create space, worked their way in the posts. Stoudemire was just a little bit bigger. Here it's kind of like the same thing. And it had worked well with Donovan Mitchell. Worked so well. The usage of Lonzo Ball had gone way down, and I thought he was going to be a big part of the team. But they were fine with having Donovan Mitchell run the point. So I don't understand what James Harden brings. It's one thing, okay, Evan Mobley's out for the season. Now you need some more offense. You can't rely on Jared Allen every single night to be able to score 18 and 20. So, but in this case here, you're getting rid of your best defender who you clearly got sick of, but you're bringing in more offense. It almost seems like everything's going to be neutralized. And what this means to me as a DFS player and as a wagerer is I'm in a big-time wait-and-see mode now for the next couple of weeks with Cleveland to see who we can trust, because I was loving Tyson, and now Tyson, who is going to have to get a lot of that production with the second unit. James Harden's a scorer. He's not, and I know we've seen it before where he's become that 10-point scorer, but he gets a zillion assists. He's not going to be that. He's this ball-dominant guy, and so is Donovan Mitchell. And I know Mitchell wanted Harden there. I really don't know why, because it's not like the Cavs weren't bringing the offense. But yeah, when Garland is in, if he's able to stay healthy for a playoff run, you're in a much better shape for that than you are with James Harden, in my opinion. Mobley was out for the season, let's just say. Okay, now I can see it a little bit more. So now from the Clippers standpoint, I mean, was their hand forced? Because now what they've done is they've taken a fragile situation, because Kawhi Leonard is the factor. If Kawhi Leonard is out, but Darius Garland's in, this team is not going to go very far. That's how good and that's how great Kawhi Leonard is. But now you're adding an oft-injured guard as someone, at least with James Harden, you knew if Kawhi was out, you knew you were going to be getting that offensive infusion. Darius Garland is a terrific offensive player. He's a great defender, but he's also a solid offensive player. But for them to take that kind of risk, again, this is what the Clippers do. They went what they thought was all in. If they can manage to somehow, some way, keep Garland and keep Kawhi Leonard healthy, maybe they make some noise in the playoffs in the first round. And that's a big time maybe, but that's some offense. And that team needed the offensive help. Cleveland's got a bunch of offense. The Clippers really don't. So that's going to be interesting to see how the balance changes and if they're able to survive in games that Kawhi Leonard sits. So for both teams, I'm not very hot about the trade. Maybe I'll think differently if both Kawhi Leonard and Darius Garland stay healthy for the entire season and the Clippers start moving up the standings. But for Cleveland, I was a little bit surprised there. And I'm hearing from a few of you, and it's good to see it, that just having those two names, and I feel like 10 years ago, people were like, just get the name, just get the name, just get the name, just get Durant, get Durant, get Durant, when it's like trade 8 first-round picks or 5 first-round picks and 3 pick swaps for Durant, but Durant's been banged up. Oh, you just need the names together. It doesn't always work out like that. So with that deal and everything, yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. And for DFS, it'll be a little bit nightmarish to figure out who we can trust until those prices come down. But the good thing with Cleveland when they had Garland was that Garland's price was down enough that you could justify investing in Cleveland, at least from a strong scoring standpoint, maybe not with Mitchell, but with Darius Garland. Then Garland got hurt, and all of a sudden the other stats for Mitchell, especially the assists, started going up. He wasn't as scoring dependent. But now, here we are here with both of these guys likely to be neutralized. It'll eventually work out for props, and we'll be able to track the usage. And I'll talk about that on podcasts and all of that. But until that time comes, meaning for the next few weeks, and we got All-Star break coming up, as far as I'm concerned, for most of February, we're going to be playing the learning game to see, especially when the team's fully healthy, how this Cavs team is going to operate. Tyson's price point drops. He's going to be gold with the second unit, especially with DeAndre Hunter traded. So Cleveland making some noise and making some moves here. So we'll have to see who's next, essentially, because some of the other options that we're seeing that could be traded, the Raptors could be making a deal. A few teams still want to try to make a final push for Giannis Antetokounmpo, but the Bucks aren't going to rush. They're going to wait for the best deal. And from the reports that we're seeing, teams might have a better idea of what exactly they can offer in the summertime. And if the Bucks aren't going anywhere. Even if Giannis plays, can they make a little bit of a run? Yeah. Do I think that they could beat the Celtics in set? No. So at this point with the Bucks, I think that they're going to likely wait because they're just not going to trade. They're not. And the offer that they want from the Heat, which is a huge offer, they're looking for that kind of offer. They're going to be waiting until the summertime. That's what it comes down to. So that might not be a rush, but other players that could end up getting dealt within the next 24 hours that could be out there include Domantas Sabonis. And that's something that we're going to have to consider. And it sucks because just like kind of last night with the Heat, the Kings have by far the best total against the Grizzlies, and we're going to want some action. I really don't know because from what I'm reading and everything, it's likely that the Kings could be making another trade, and it stinks because I'll tell you this, from the DFS angle, I'm writing up DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine as of right now for the first time all year. I have not written up either player one time. This slate tonight has a lot of slow-moving and good defensive teams on it. The Raptors are on it. The Timberwolves have questionables. You've got Denver and the Knicks, very slow and methodical, and the Knicks coming off a back-to-back, which is dangerous. You've got the Clippers there with Cleveland. And now, I mean, who's going to be playing from that trade? Are they going to be cleared in time? I guess we've got some answers there, and we can trust that matchup from the Clipper side. But again, slow. Thunder Spurs will be interesting. Those games have been fun. We've seen multiple where the Spurs have kind of handed it to the Thunder, and the Thunder are a little bit banged up coming off a back-to-back too. The Bucks play a little bit more on the slower side, though they've sped things up. And the Pelicans, we know they play quickly. That's going to be a matchup we have to attack. And then the Rockets and Celtics, good defensive teams that play very, very slow. That one is going to be one we're going to have to be careful. So really your highest total right now at 232.5 is Grizzlies Kings. And that's one we have to attack, but we really can't touch Domantas Sabonis. I can write him up, but then I can write a little disclaimer that, hey, this guy might be traded, so play at your own risk. At this point, also, you're seeing his minutes get monitored. So I'm sure for that reason to see if make sure he doesn't get hurt. But they could take him out tonight. The other guys, because let's face it, no one really wants Zach LaVine. I don't foresee him being traded unless there's some monster Giannis trade with the Kings that I'm not seeing. But I feel like with DeRozan and LaVine tonight, those are players that we're going to have to turn to in a high-octane environment, and that's what Memphis brings because they play fast, they play quick, and Memphis is also dealing with an overhaul of their team. They're going to have the post open all night. Even as a volume spot sub 9K, this would be great for Domantas Sabonis. If we get a report from Shams or whoever that he's not being traded, I'll make sure he's written up, and we're going to go after him tonight in a volume spot in GPPs. If not, if I don't see that, I don't know if I can write him up with full confidence. We'll have to see. I mean, there are other centers I like tonight here. Look, my big board right here, there's about 6 centers that we can look at. We have to figure what's going on with Milwaukee because we want to take advantage of the pace there. But, yeah, I'll say this. There are other centers that are in very attractive spots tonight, like Sengun, like Zubac, both in very attractive spots. And if that's the case there versus a shaky Sabonis, who, let's not forget, he gets traded during the game. He bounces during the game. That's it for him there. And he's already on minutes restriction. They may just hold him out tonight for the hell of it. Why not? Why even risk it at this point? Sacramento's not going anywhere. They'll take the fine or whatever it is. So we'll have to wait and see regarding Domantas Sabonis tonight. Ja Morant, I mean, you've got a lot of guards there right now, and we're already seeing in just a few games what Ty Jerome is doing. And they've got some guys there. And with that, I'm wondering if the organization is going to be able to trade Ja Morant, and if a contending team is going to think that Ja Morant is somewhat of a locker room chemistry killer. Because obviously the rep behind him isn't good right now. So I think it's going to be very hard to move him. But I'll say this. I want to see these young guns here on Memphis. This is what we're looking at right now when it comes to the Grizzlies. And they're half injured too. Aldama, we'll have to see if he's ready to go. Edey's not ready to come back, but we've seen what Edey can bring to the table. Moving on from Jaren Jackson Jr. is a major, major, major step for them. And that's a step that they're going to have to look inside their depth and figure out who's it going to be that steps up now. Is it going to be Jalen Wells? Possibly here. G.G. Jackson, who we've utilized. That's going to be someone that we're going to have to look for now to be a little bit more proactive. We can take advantage of this from the Memphis side too tonight. So that's kind of where I'm looking when it comes to the Memphis-Sacramento situation, but it's very hard for me to put that trust into Domantas Sabonis. And other guys that I'm looking at very quickly that I'll mention, I am looking at Kawhi tonight. That's for darn sure. And regarding if Harden plays, I'm not putting Donovan Mitchell in that write-up tonight. Debating regarding Kevin Durant, but really from the shooting guard side, I'm almost feeling like it's either I'm going value with Cam Spencer, who's going to be, in my opinion, a big spot. Ty Jerome, we've seen him volume produce, so I'm fine with him there. And look, Trey Murphy, who it's funny, qualifies at shooting guard and small forward on FanDuel. Point guard, though, on DraftKings, we're seeing him, and it's true, we're seeing him bring up the ball a little bit more. And in that matchup with the low total there for the Bucks, who have been starting to play a little bit quicker and are on a second leg of a back-to-back here, 221.5. Very, very interesting, to say the least here. Somebody else who's very, very interesting, who joins me every single Wednesday here on Fantasy Sports Daily, find his work at fantasyguru.com, is the Bosco, Rich Maletto. Rich, what's going on, man? Happy Super Bowl week.
Happy Super Bowl week, man.
Dude, do you bet or do you even look at the fun props, the Gatorade and all those ridiculous props? Because I'll say this, man, from being in production, the one prop I used to look at was the halftime show, the over-under on how many songs they'll play. And when they would say, we've got this person performing, that person, you could kind of start to, you start to narrow it down a little bit. Now it's become ridiculous because it's just a choppy halftime show for the most part with a zillion acts there. You don't even realize who the main attraction is anymore.
That's true. I do like checking them out. I'm not in a legal betting state, so right. I don't, really go push those bets or chase those bets. Back in the day when we all kind of did our own gambling with it and had some fun with it, amongst friends. I like the Gatorade one because I think it's a wild card. It's completely fluky. There's no real method to the madness, right? Unless you somehow know what flavor the teams like to put out there every week. I like the coin flip one because there's only two options. It doesn't pay 50%, but you got a 50% shot at getting it right. The over under on the national anthem. I kind of enjoy that one. I tend to follow that from a yearly perspective. And again, unless you're really in tune with these artists and they've done it before, it's kind of a fluky thing, But yeah, the odds are okay on it. It's some fun. Me, man, I like to pick odds that I don't have a sweat for.
Right.
I alt them down so far that I might put 2 or 3 or 4 of them together, but I want them to mostly hit or cash by halftime or as we go into the third quarter. So, and I got to tell you, man, the books are sharp. This game is going to be tough, in my opinion, too. I feel like there's some games or angles where it's like, man, I feel like this is a moneymaker for us. This Super Bowl, I'm nervous. I feel like I have a feeling we're going to get caught by the hook on more than one place.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there, man. And I've narrowed it down to I'll give you guys, and I'll give you, Rich, the two things that I'm looking at that are standing out for me. and they're both rushing attempts props. Drake May over 6.5, Ramondre Stevenson over 14.5. Those are the two props right now that I've bet on, that I'm looking at, that I'm fully confident in. We talked last week about Hunter Henry and AJ Barner, and that made me, AJ Barner, someone that's been on my mind, but you got me off Hunter Henry because you're like, what if it's Hooper? Then it's like, yeah, that's very true right there. So I'm off him now. But really what I'm looking at is those rush attempt props, and that's really it. The only other thing, Rich, and I want to get your take on this, I found, and this really could tell a story for what we're looking at when it comes to the game flow and the total, the odds for either quarterback to throw for multiple touchdowns, they're very, very good, and even plus money on some books here, which shows that we could be looking at a low-scoring affair when you're seeing that good of odds for under on 1.5 touchdown passes.
We were talking about this on the live stream, and all of us are very apprehensive of expecting much from this game. Tyler pointed out that as he did his projections, he has this being like a 24-20 game. I do too. I think that's damn near spot on. Well, the total's 44.5. So like I said, depending on which side of that coin you want to be on, which a field goal could obviously flip that. I don't know where the points are going to come from, as we talked about last night. I think you're going to have something will happen either on the defensive side of the ball or special teams, in my opinion, that's going to be a big play, a scoring opportunity, something that's going to flip it a little bit. I'm not really confident in any touchdowns. Like, I don't like the Stevenson or the Walker prop for touchdowns. I'm not all about the multiple touchdowns. I think the angle, and Tyler kind of put me on this last night, because I was kind of looking at the yards for Drake May and I was apprehensive. His thought was, why not look at the attempts angle? And I'm kind of in that ballpark. Let's look at the 30.5 or 31.5, 31 attempts, somewhere in that range. I'd like to get closer to that over 30 or 30 and above type of range, but the odds are, kind of meh. I think that's where I want to live. Stevenson, 2.5 receptions. I think that's live. I think that's something to look at. He typically has outdone Henderson in that regard, but I got to tell you, Fensty, this idea that, Henderson's a non-factor, he only played 4 snaps last week, which I think the weather played into it. It's not really his jam. If anybody's going to get a big play, which Seattle really, really clamps down on that, but the way that Seattle has been, the ball's been moved against that defense has been the running backs and tight ends. That's why I understood where you were coming from with Henry. My concern, like you said, was what if both of them are at 30 yards? What if both of them are at 40 yards? Like, we're just inside that threshold for the over-under on the yardage that, excuse me, makes it a little dangerous, right? But nobody is looking at Henderson. And, man, when everybody goes one way, I want to go the opposite. Like, that's just worked for me, especially on bets. And I just got this stinking feeling that, man, Henderson's going to catch 2, 3, 4 balls.
Wow.
And I know that hasn't been really the thing, but if you're going to get him use, it's not running between the tackles. And I know Stevenson's been more the reception guy. I just feel like something different is going to happen. We see this with the fluke plays. I mean, honestly, one of my favorite bets, and Tyler talked me off the ledge a little bit because I was about to go all in on it, Barner over a half-yard rushing. I think we're going to see a tush push. If we see a tush push for Seattle, it's going to be Barner getting the ball. All we need is a 3rd and 1, a 4th and 1 where they do it one time. And I got to believe points are going to be so tight. I think we're going to see the going for it on 4th down. Seattle doesn't go for it as much as New England. New England's kind of on the upper end of the spectrum as far as going for it on a regular basis. Seattle's more on the middle, low middle, somewhere in there. And, it's been a while. Barners did it last week or one time, so it's not like something they do all the time. But all we need is one. Half yard. And without Charbonnet there, they don't really have a power guy to turn to. That's not George Halani's jam, right? So if they need a yard in this game at some point to keep a driver alive, which I believe will happen, it's Barner. And all we need is one. That's it.
Wow. It's over half a yard rushing for AJ. Well, if that's how you think it's going to happen, you might as well bet him to put a few shekels on anytime touchdown. for AJ Barner then.
Yeah, those odds, I stay away from touchdown props, man, because I don't necessarily think the tush push will come inside the 1 yard line. What if it's there at the 45-yard line? It's 4th and 1. It's a 3-score game. We're getting down to the end.
Yep.
Do they go for it or they try the field goal?
Right. They're going to have to go for it.
Right. So
you have to attack the defense. When you have two defenses facing off, you can't play chess when you're down by multiple scores in the second half. You can't.
Right.
You can't. That's where I'm a traditional put the points on the board. That's situational. You got to start taking some deep shots.
Yeah, because I mean, you score that field goal, great. They know they need a touchdown. They're going to spread the field out and they're going to push for the touchdown. You are going to have to play defense deep. You're going to have to probably give up some stuff underneath if it's at the end of the game, right? We see it all the time. You want to stop the big play, they start marching down the field. Now, if it's a tie game, maybe it's different, right? But you could see it could be a 10-7 game in the first half. 2 minutes to go in the first half. Do you keep the drive going, or do you kick it to them and give them one more opportunity to score before the half, right? These are just the scenarios. I see multiple outs, if you will, of Barner getting that if, in fact, simply because Charbonnet's not around. If Charbonnet's in the lineup, this isn't a bet that I would really be in on, even though we've seen it before, but I think we've seen it because Charbonnet's not there. They don't really have a power back to go to. I mean, that's not really Walker's jam.
So let me ask you this then, Rich. For all of us playing Showdown here, because you see Adam's question too. As a captain, we've been talking and praising the defense the entire time. Is that the strategy right there? Captain the defense.
The problem with that is if we're good at predicting turnovers, why aren't we betting them? Like, in order for the defense to really pay off in the captain spot, you need a turnover and a touchdown. Right?
Drake May to throw an interception was that, I didn't check it to this morning, but was that minus 140. And I thought about putting a few bucks on that.
And that's fair. But even that one interception, what does that do for a DFS score?
Yeah, that's true.
Like I said, my concern with it is you really need the defense to have a great game for it to pay off, right? Like, it's low dollars, but if you don't get at least a touchdown, a turnover or two, and a couple of sacks, it's not enough. You know, if this game ends up being a low-scoring 14-7 game and there's not a defensive touchdown, is that enough? Because I could see that plausibly being enough for the defense, right? Because in a game like that, where's the points coming from the offense, right? But I'm hesitant to do that, man. I really am. Here's where I'm at. The only player that I think I really want to hook my trailer to, and I don't know if it's up yet, but we've got our Super Bowl prop page up. All of us went JSN. It's only been 4 so far, but all of us went JSN over the 95. I feel like the Patriots can be beat on the back end. They're strong in the front 7. I think JSN's going to get peppered. I don't see him not getting his typical 5 to 6 receptions. Like, that's just odd when he doesn't. It has happened recently over the last 6 to 8 weeks, but not common.
Right.
And all it takes is a couple of plays for him, right? And Shaheed, we're not going to get high volume from him, but he could break one. It could be a special teams touchdown. Now, to your point, if it's special teams touchdown, that does help the defense. So from that regard, I don't mind gambling on Seattle in that case. But holy crap, we're really banking on a special teams defensive touchdown for us to cash in that format.
Right, and you could have someone like in Adam's situation here, Kayshon Boutte, go, hit one deep and he's good to go and he hits value.
Right, although they really don't give up chunk plays. If I was going to bet on a player making one play count, it's going to be Pop Douglas or Kyle Williams. Like, it always seems like the Patriots scheme for one play opportunity, whether it's a screen pass to one of these guys or a slant or something like that. Boutte's job has been the big play. Don't get me wrong. You're spot on. That's what all he's done, right? I just don't know that Seattle gives that up so much. I mean, they really don't give up chunk plays. That's just this defense. The funny thing is the defense is so good, but that doesn't necessarily mean it shows up in the fantasy scoring.
Right.
Seattle's defense could be lights out this weekend. That doesn't mean we're going to get a bunch of fantasy points.
Right.
That's the concern I have.
You spoiled me, Rich, with Jacksonville's defense that you gave me about 10 weeks ago.
Well, in Jacksonville and Seattle, I pushed Seattle. Someone mentioned that last night. I pushed Seattle back when they had their bye, and it worked for us over the long haul. But guess what? I took a bunch of questions going, well, hey, they only got 7 points last week. It's a bad matchup, blah, blah, blah. And I said, look, my method for this madness is I just let it ride. I take the good with the bad. If you want to chase the other matchups, go for it. I'm not. That's why I do it this way. It's one less piece I have to manage around. That doesn't mean I expect them to score me 15 points every week.
Right.
I take the 5-point weeks with the 24-point weeks because I want the 24-point weeks, and the 5-point weeks don't kill me. I know everyone's like, well, I lost by 3 points. That doesn't mean that's where you lost.
Right, exactly.
Did the other guy have a big game, and that's where the extra 3 points came from? Did your quarterback have a crappy game and only get you 15 points? Like, we can't – it drives me bonkers, and I know I've beat this horse. I can't handle well, this guy scored more points on my bench, so I played the wrong guy. I don't buy into that logic. I just don't.
They line up the positions. They're like, oh, this guy got me 2 more points than this guy.
Right.
They're like, match him with this line. It's all a bunch of crap. You're right about that.
Fensty, if we tried to play projecting points, then just go bet the projected points. They give you those options.
Well,
now.
dude, this is why, and I've told you this before, and I think we discussed this last year. Our buddy Adam Ronis, who I would, you drove him on the wrong side of the street. I drove him on the wrong side of the street for radio shows, so we have that in common. But Adam Ronis used to say to me, and one of the things we would debate constantly were, well, if your quarterback, no matter what they scored, isn't in the top 10 or top 12, they had a bad week. But if quarterback had a monster week and your quarterback still had 22, 23 points, but they ranked somehow 12th or 13th, not good enough, which I'm like, no, that's still a good week.
It's all relative, right? Week
to
week. And that's why I don't want to encourage people to chase the points, because I feel like when you do that, you get haphazard on the waiver wire, chasing points that are fluky. You also start questioning yourself on the right place. Why would I ever bench Jamar Chase? Yes, he got 2 points week, whatever. Why would I bench him? Well, Marcus Lattimore was on him, okay? And I understand Lattimore shut down Mike Evans for 2 games, and then the third game, Mike Evans blew him up.
Right.
And if you benched Mike Evans, who is a starter for you every other week, because you have this matchup in mind, and people have good days, bad days. This happens all the time. And we know how many, if it was so easy to just chase the matchups, then we would only chase matchup props and we would cash all our props. And that never happens. Like, reality has to set in at some point. So I'd rather play just like I feel like Henderson's going to do something this week. I would never suggest anybody played Henderson over Stevenson.
Right.
There's no data or logic that points in that direction other than me going, I'm telling you guys, something's off. I don't know if he was hurt. They were hiding him, but I will be shocked if Henderson doesn't have a big play.
Well,
that doesn't mean he's going to play more than
20%. You're thinking that the team is fully zoned in on Stevenson, and they're like, oh, Henderson gets 5 carries a game, so he's unless there's an injury, we don't have to worry as much about him.
Right.
So I get where you're coming from there, but something else with what you just said that click that I want to make sure everybody knows. I've been asking the question the last few weeks on this stream regarding when it comes to who is the big spend up for DFS, who is the big swinger of the studs in this matchup you have to take advantage of. And I realize that I've been wasting mine and everyone's time, and yours too, Rich. I asked you last week. It's JSN.
I would say it's JSN.
It's JSN. Because, look, can the Patriots maybe neutralize him a little bit? Yes, but the bottom line is you've seen this guy kick major ass in 85 to 90% of weeks, almost unstoppable. You're gonna go down with the best swing.
Well, here's the other thing, Fensty. He's probably going to be the highest owned, right?
Right, which I know is another form of strategy.
Well,
but do you eat the chalk?
That's what I was going to say. I think you eat the chalk. Here's the thing. You have to make your bet. If you don't want to eat the chalk, you are banking on JSN having a bad game. That's fine. I'm with you. I'm not going to bank on that when the dude's been successful 90% of the year put up some of the best numbers we'd ever seen from the position, has openly admitted he wants to go down as the greatest receiver. So he's trying to do anything and everything to make it right. Even when he has the meh games, he's still peppered with 5 to 6 targets. Even when he was quiet in the first half, he comes back in the second half with the touchdown, still ends up getting 90-plus yards and 6 catches. If I'm paying up for anybody, it's JSN. I'm 100% with you. And I don't care. He's the highest owned because I will not lose by benching JSN. I just can't do it. If you want to go anti-chalk, I totally get it. Then my suggestion would be you go Kenneth Walker because the matchup screams Patriots rush defense is going to shut them down and nobody's going to be on Walker. And Walker finding the end zone 2 times on only 50 yards rushing is completely plausible. So if you're going to pivot from the chalk, it's Walker. So in my opinion, you either go JSN or you go Walker. Or the only other out, if you really are on the Patriots side, you go Drake May, because I think the only way the Patriots move the ball or stay in this game is with a bunch of pass yards. They're going to have to dink and dunk it down the field. I don't know if that's Hooper and Henry both have games, if that's both running backs, both tight ends have games. Does Diggs get a little more activity because he works that short area a little more? Is Mac Hollins kind of that first down guy? Does he get some of that? I don't have a lot of faith in any of the receivers. Like I already mentioned, I think Pop Douglas and Kyle Williams can have they're both good for a play a game. That's it. They're going to get 1 or 2 plays a game. That's what the Patriots have done with them all the year. Nothing has changed there. So it's going to be moved around. So the only way, I guess, for your captain's question, and I know you're not going to save money on all these options. It's JSN, it's May, and it's Walker. And it depends on how you're wanting to approach the game. You think the Patriots win, it's May. If you think JSN shut down, it's Walker. If you want to keep up with the masses and have a shot, I think you have to go JSN.
Ultimately, and I know we talked about this a little bit last week, you think Seattle is going to win?
I have it Seattle 24-20 is what I put in our staff picks.
Okay.
That was what I thought it was before Tyler said anything. That's what I thought it was before I ever looked at the over-under score. I think it's somewhere in that ballpark.
24-20.
And I don't know, can the Patriots get 2 to 3 touchdowns? I don't know. But I do feel like that defense and special teams can make a play. I do feel like in the Super Bowl, there is no more weeks. So whether, another bet that's kind of savvy, or I thought that was interesting, was over 2.5 passers. Now that was only plus 160, whereas I can't remember. There was another prop Tyler found. It was like plus 1,100. That kind of implied the same thing, like a quarterback receives a pass, I think it was, or something along those lines.
Oh, like the Philly special?
Right. I like the 2.5, and here's why. How often do we see a weird, schemed up, gimmicky play?
Of course we do. We see it a lot. You got
every year, right?
You got to.
So is Diggs throw one? Does Stevenson throw one? Does JSN? I think we've seen JSN throw one in the past, right? What if there's a fake field goal or fake punt?
Right.
You know what I mean? These are all things. So I feel like the path to a third. What if a quarterback gets knocked the wind out of him for one play and Sammy Darnold has to leave the field to get checked out for a concussion? Right. So for me, there's all these potential outs of over 2.5 passers that I'm kind of digging it at plus 160. You know what I mean? It's not great payoff odds, but to mix it with something, I'm kind of digging it. Talk about gimmicky bets.
Man. That is a gimmicky bet, man. That 2.5 passers for the full game or just for a team?
Full game. Like I said, what do you need? What do you need?
True. That is unique.
You need, and we've seen quarterbacks leave for a play or two. That's not uncommon.
Right.
Super Bowl, like you just said, we see a lot of the goofy, gimmicky plays. Whether it's going for it on 4th and 1, going for it instead of kicking it on a 4th and 5. I see a whole plethora of options where that's plausible. Now, my problem is if it's plus 250, plus 300, I'm slamming that bet. At plus 160, I'd rather maybe mix it with something that maybe I took Stevenson's receptions down to 1.5 at minus 600 or something like that. Right. Mix it with a bet like that. You're pretty confident you get Stevenson receptions by halftime. Now we're just hoping we get a third passer, and now all of a sudden we're getting, 4.5 times our money.
So here's something interesting, Rich, that I'll tell you. And that's last week we were talking about JSN when we were starting to look at props, and it was at over 7.5 receptions, and it was pretty juiced up. On DraftKings right now, you could get over 6.5 receptions for JSN at minus 139. Again, the books are kind of showing the signs that they're thinking JSN may get held down, but us two in lockstep here, for me, that's an over bet that I would make last week and I'm going to make this week.
Let's also keep in mind so they think he's likely gets 6 or 7 receptions is what that number tells me.
Yes.
Right? Okay. All right. How many games did JSN have less than 6 receptions this year?
Exactly.
There was only like 4, I think I counted, 4 or 5. Okay. Of the games with 6 or more receptions, guess how many he had with like less than 90, 93 yards? There was like
2 or 3.
1 or 2. Okay. So I'm with Vegas. I think the line is sharp, but 6 to 7 receptions is still in my mind 80 to 120 yards and a touchdown.
Right.
Which in a 24 to 20 game projection, that's a pretty decent game, because if you're projecting it that way, you're only expecting the quarterbacks to have 230 to 240 yards passing. You're expecting the running backs to have 50 to 70 yards rushing, and you're not real sure where the touchdowns are coming from. Does Cooper Kupp get a touchdown in 30 yards? Plausible. I think that's well within range.
Yep. That is one slot in my DFS showdown lineup. Cooper Kupp will be there, and that's even going in on JSN and Cooper Kupp. I'm going to do it. Rich, final question for you. I asked Armando yesterday, so I'm going to ask you. It's the Super Bowl, man. Besides the football, it's also about the food. What is the ideal Rich Maletto Super Bowl food?
I love buffalo chicken dip.
There we go. Armando said the same thing. Same with me.
I don't know what it is about a good buffalo chicken dip, but I have a hard time putting it down.
Yes.
I just don't know what it is. I will eat the whole flipping pan for some reason.
Dude, it's so good, man. It's excellent. It's almost, because it's one of those dips that's not like a French onion dip where you have it as a side or an appetizer. A buffalo chicken dip is almost like a main course, or it's as close to a main course as possible.
We've done that.
Yeah.
We've done that for food, because I'm like, there's enough. We put a whole chicken in the dang thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, if I eat half of it, I ate half a dang chicken. That's a pretty good protein for the day.
Yep. Buffalo chicken dips. That's a very popular answer here. Rich, thank you so much again for joining me, man. And next week, regarding your available, dude, we're heading to the track. We're talking freaking NASCAR, man. We got Daytona, 10 away? Next week, man, we got to hit it.
And if any of your listeners are curious, we got cars on the track today. If anyone's not working a day job, feel free to tune into Fox. I don't think the qualifying, because of all the timing, they got it all jacked up. I read it was supposed to be on Fox Sports 2. I'm not finding it now. But at 4:30 Eastern, they're going to do the last chance race for the feature tonight. And at 6 Eastern, they're supposed to run. Now, NASCAR channel says they're not worried about the weather. The Debbie Downer here is, so something to watch. But if you want to get a little taste, we are going to have cars on the track today at a famous short track that NASCAR doesn't ever go to. So regular Fox network, if you're bored or got some time.
Yeah, any tracks in the DC area, like the DC, Maryland, Virginia area?
So yes, kind of. Richmond, Virginia.
Oh, that's 2.5 hours away.
That's your area.
That is kind of my area. I'm talking like, give me a track in like Northeast DC. Not, you know what? Don't do that. Don't do that.
How far's Dover?
That's 2 hours away. That's a 2 hour straight shot for me.
The only thing that's about as close as you're going to get is Dover. And because I don't think because that's closer to New York City, Pocono. So it'd be Richmond, Virginia, or Martinsville's even further away from you.
Yes.
Dover would be right there. Those are probably the closest. That said, IndyCar, and maybe I make a trip out to DC to visit you. IndyCar is running in the streets of DC, including going down Mall Boulevard.
Wow.
For free. It is going to be a free race for all to see.
Dude, you ever play the game Road Rash when you were younger?
Yes.
You ever hear that game? Dude,
yes.
Racing in DC is going to be exactly like Road Rash. Things are going to break. I'm just letting you know, okay?
Well, do you know how much they had to pay in Chicago just to get the roads worthy enough for the race car?
Dude, I can only imagine. It's almost like, is it worth it? But Rich, talking NASCAR here, talking racing, and starting next week, we got Daytona coming up. We're going to talk racing on this show to get everybody involved. We got a lot of heat going on, too. Sean Angle, by the way, our colleague, up for a little award, too, for the FSWA. Yes, same with Jeff Mann. So Sean Angle for NASCAR Writer of the Year. Good luck, Shawnee. And also to Jeff Mann's in the Elite Sports Show and crew. Phil Backert, Sandro Anello, Ray Flowers, Ted Schuster, part of that. Also a finalist for an award, too. That's what it's all about. But the biggest award is you guys hanging with us, whether it's in Discord or on fantasyguru.com. For Rich Maletto, I'm Justin Fensterman. Ray Flowers back tomorrow, same time, same place, same channel. Fantasy Sports Daily, right here on the Elite Plus